All right, guys. John here with the Conscious Man podcast on 18 Inches Down. I hope everyone's doing well today. And if you're not, why? That would be the question that you ask yourself. And sometimes we're not doing okay, and that's okay to feel that way. So it's important for you as a man listening to this to understand the importance of knowing what it means to be in touch with your emotions, but also to be okay with what you're going through. And it may not feel okay, but if you say it out loud to yourself, it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to be going through this, because I guarantee you on the other side of this and through this, if I'm self aware enough, I'm going to gain some very, very valuable treasures. Most men that I meet, and not all, but most men, including myself in the past, are not that self aware. We live in this kind of box of a what would you call it? A box that says, look, I just get up in the morning, I focus on my work, I bring home the bacon, the money to my family, if you're married, if you have a partner, and that's my duty. The emotional stuff, I just kind of leave that to the wife's friends, and, leave that to the female group. Leave that to the emotional ones. I'm not emotional. I just need to be a man and grind it out. If that's any part of your life, if that's any part of your thinking, then thank you for coming to the Conscious Man podcast, because one of the things that I endeavor to do is to help us as men become more self-aware that we do have a feminine energy side to us that we would do very well in linking up with, sinking into, so that we can be the well-rounded, mature man that our wives, our partners, or our families are so desperately wanting from us, and they need to see it in us and through us. Now, when I say feminine side, some guys really take offense to this, because they're like, "What are you talking about? Woke stuff, John? Are you talking about, this feminine, masculinity that's out there that's not even masculine anymore? There's a plot to take out the masculine, and what are you doing siding with the feminine?" Listen, all I'm saying is that there is a like mother father heart of God that is resonant in each and every individual, whether you realize that or not. It's the energy, it's the spiritual side of things that comes through us to help us to keep in touch with this sensitive side that we all carry as men. And if you don't have a sensitive side, it doesn't mean you're weak, guys. I'm not talking about weakness here. I'm talking about a well balanced sensitivity that comes through a feminine energy from the heart of God. Now, you don't have to believe that. That's okay. I'm experiencing it, and I've learned the hard way, and I've awakened to the fact that this is what's needed for my family and my wife in order for me to be with a well-rounded, mature individual that she married and that she needs in order for us to not only get along, but to thrive in our relationship. And so when I'm talking about what I mean by it, okay, say I was raised with two older sisters. And because I was raised with two older sisters, I tapped into, or I moved towards, or sunk into, if you will, this feminine side of things, or this feminine energy, because I was around my sisters, or I was around females. Not all the time, because my dad's a man's man. He's a logger and a trucker and biker, and really a masculine man. But one of the things I learned growing up with sisters and being around females a lot was, hold on a minute, they have some needs that the men are not providing. And that's the emotional support, the emotional intelligence that we carry resonant inside of us. Some of it's so dormant because it's buried by this egotistical masculine energy, patriarchal energy that starts wars to the degree that we're like, okay, this is why men just don't have a clue. And so I'm here to help us to hopefully see a little bit more of how important this side of things is inside of you and I as men. So, really, the message today is about containment and ownership. I want to talk specifically about what those two are, and we're going to dive right into it. What I mean by ownership is taking ownership, not of a person, but of a life. That's your life. Taking ownership and responsibility. Ownership means that I am laying hold of a responsibility in my life so that it unveils this ownership that is not only attractive, but that has a quality to it that leads to or is birthed and is the foundation of ownership slash containment. And we'll talk about containment. By the way, Teal Swan has a great message. If you don't know who she is, I highly recommend checking her out. A message on YouTube called Containment. Just type it in, Teal Swan. Um, and really, I've heard this saying several times throughout my life, but it really started to spark something when my wife and I were listening to Teal on this subject a while back. And then I began to really chew on it in my own life and what this means. So let me break this down in simplistic form for you guys. When we're looking at the word ownership, let's start there. Taking ownership means I have a responsibility for something. So let's look at an external type of toy, for example, because men love toys, whether it's their truck or their boat or their motorcycle, airplane. It could be a number of different things. So let's look at a boat. Since it's summertime at the time of this message, I live in Maui. So there's a lot of boats, a lot of fishing vessels and yachts and ships and all of that. So you see it all around. One of the things that you'll notice with somebody that has a yacht, for example, a very expensive yacht, they will, the owner of that yacht, if it happens to be male, female too, but we're talking about males right now. If it happens to be male, what they're going to do is go to any length to take care of that vessel. I mean, they are going to go in and have the hull looked at consistently. They're going to have a diver go down and take care of the barnacle situation and look for any kind of holes or deficiencies in that hull on a constant basis. That's number one. That's not the first priority, but it is a major top priority, especially in salt water. Another thing they're going to do is shine the heck out of that boat. They're going to polish it. They're going to clean it. They're going to clean the leather. If it has leather interior, they're going to go in and they're going to shine the crapola out of every piece of chrome, and they're going to polish it to no end. They're going to take ownership of that ship, of that vessel, that boat. It's the same thing when you see somebody with a 4x4 or a nice car of any kind. They're going to go out there and they're going to wax it. They're going to wash it. They're going to wax it. They're going to polish it. They're going to take out every bit of detail, substance, chemical that they can find so that they can spend time. A lot of times, some people do. Some guys sit out there for hours and days cleaning their car, polishing and waxing and making that sucker shine. That's taking ownership, right? Sometimes it can go overboard in the ownership category. I realize that, but that's more egoic than it is heart-centered. So we'll kind of flush that out here as we go. But when I talk about ownership, you're taking ownership. Then there's the responsibility that's included in that, right? I'm being responsible for this outward material item, taking ownership and responsibility. It's the same way with somebody that goes and shines and buffs and waxes their body. Okay. A dude that goes to the gym all the time and stays in there 6, 7 days a week, buffs himself out, makes himself look good, and then he has his whole diet routine. He's taking ownership of his vessel. He's taking ownership of his body. Okay. Then that leads to the responsibility of what it looks like and what it means to take ownership over my health. So I think you get the point. The big fat flippin' question of the hour then is, why don't we do the same thing with the wives in our life? Why don't we do the same thing with the women in our life? Why don't we do the same thing with the people that we love the most surrounding our life? Specifically, I'm talking about the women or the girls or the people that we love in our life. Now, I realize that some of you may not have a partner that is female. Right now, I just want to address this male female situation, okay? Is this idea that when you go all the way back, okay, let's just look at the original story of Adam and Eve for a minute. And again, some of you may not be religious, and that's okay, but I just want to use this as a metaphor, as a place to begin here. When you look at the story, okay, of Adam and Eve, there's many stories to look at, but it just is just coming to mind. When you look at the story of Adam and Eve, what you see is before Adam ultimately makes the decision to lay blame and enter in fully into the egoic side of his own nature, he lived in absolute bliss and ownership and containment and responsibility. He had a responsibility to take care of what? The atmosphere of presence, the garden. The garden is symbolic. Eden is a symbology, okay, of a spiritual responsibility that says that once I've been given a responsibility that like God and love did with Adam, he said, listen, Adam, I want you to take responsibility of our relationship, walking in the cool of the day in this place called the garden. And then Eden means atmosphere, means a place of presence. So in essence, what he's saying is, God is saying to Adam is like, look, I want you to be living out the image of what you've been shown and what you've been a part of and what you've partaken of and what you are one with. Walking with me, walking with love, loving yourself, walking with love, and enjoying the responsibility of that hand in hand, walking it out. And then from that place, start taking care of the animals and the garden, the trees, and all of nature's qualities, right? Take care of that because you have ownership. You've learned it from the best first, right? God is saying this to Adam metaphorically, but quite literally, I'm sure, in some way. Adam, you're mirroring me. Go forth and do the same throughout humanity, through your relationships, through the quality of ownership and containment. See, containment goes closely hand in hand with ownership, because containment is there's a container, if you will, surrounding my life, my sphere of influence, that I'm unveiling quality ownership in, that has nothing but good at hand for the interest of the other. It's unveiling something of a unconditional love to be seen and known and felt and heard throughout the earth. This was the original plan of love. This was the original plan of God. Had nothing to do with religion, guys. Nothing. Religion's man-made, it's made up. And then we start moving these weird kind of ritualistic, idolistic scenarios called denominationalism or fundamentalism. And so then we start segregating and separating from our ideals. But if you break it all down to simplicity, it's about looking at unconditional love and then saying, okay, I'm not only looking at it, but I'm experiencing it. Now it makes me want to love myself because I'm mirroring it, and take ownership not only of myself and my health and the well-being of who I am, but also it spills out to everything and everyone around me. Thus, the examples of the material things like the boat, the car, the motorcycle, but more importantly, the humans in our life. More importantly, the people that we love and care for. And then guess what? It goes out to the community and starts spreading all over the earth. Wouldn't that be just a utopious world? Wouldn't that just be a world of bliss? Wouldn't that just be an amazing idea for planet Earth and humanity? Of course it would. That was the original intent, until man got his greedy little egoic hands in it and said, I've got the truth. I hold all the truth. So I'm going to start a movement. I'm going to start a group of people in a community that says we reflect this truth. But in reality, all they saw and experienced was a facet of truth. They had some facts, but they had a facet. They didn't have all the facts, right? So look at your own life as a man. You don't have all the facts. Although the ego says, well, yeah, I've got the facts. I got this thing down. I got my wife figured out. I got the people in my life figured out. And so I know what they really need. And then all the while, we just have a facet of what they need. And I like to put that little E in between the FACT, little E in there to define something. And that E could stand for energetic excellence, or it could stand for emotional intelligence, the E, intelligence, right? So you could define it any way you want, but that's just kind of how I look at it. That if you add an E in there, you have a facet. So that keeps us humble, not only, first of all, the humility in our lives, realizing that we don't know everything, especially men. We think we do, but we really don't. And then we come to find out that we hardly know anything, right? And then we get married and then we really don't know anything. And then we have kids and then we're like, OMG, look at me. I'm a hot mess. So this idea of containment, think about a container, all right? And what's in that container? You're a container. You're a container of love. You're a container of energy. You're a container of spirit. You're a container of all of these wonderful attributes, but you're also a container of an illusion called an ego. EGO, edging God out, edging goodness out, edging grace out. And one of the main primary objectives of the ego is to think that it's in charge and to give you all the facts, making the greater part of you believe, trying to at least, and it does a very good job in most men, making you believe that, hey, I've got it handled. I don't need to anybody to tell me anything. And if they do, I'm going to let them know. I'm going to react in anger. That's the main trigger point of men, is to just say, okay, you know what? I'm going to control the situation by getting angry. Guys, I've been there, done that more than a million times. I'm wearing the flippin' t-shirt out and I didn't give it to the Goodwill. I took it down to the beach and burned it in the bonfire. You know what I'm saying? The ego is a nasty little thing that needs healing. But many of us don't even realize that. We're just like, I hate this part of my life. Well, what we're doing when we say that, I hate this part of me, I don't like this part of me, I can't stand this part of me, once we realize it and become self-aware at age 60, what we're doing is we're sending more resistance and more hurt and pain to that part of us, that little Johnny, I call it, in me for John, little Johnny, that little part of me. I'm sending more pain and hurt and trauma to that side of me when it really needs healing, wholeness, care, love, emotional intelligence, sensitivity, feminine energy, all those good motherly qualities, the side of us that we have inside of us. Yes, you have that, dude. You have that, brother. You have that, bruh, inside of you. Whether you realize that or not, it's a good thing. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger. So just keep that in mind. So containment is this wonderful, beautiful attribute that we can actually engage in once we have a level of ownership and we see this. But first, it starts with self-awareness. Then we can move into ownership in a healthy way, non egoic way. You know, you sit out there and buff your car only so long, and then you're going a little overkill because, after all, if somebody comes by, you're waiting for somebody to come by and give you a compliment or a comment, or some female energy to walk by and say, "Oh, look at you. Can I go for a ride?" And you're like, no, but thank you for the offer. I am perfectly content with my wife. I'm perfectly content with the females in my life, the female friends and beautiful, wonderful females, beautiful, wonderful females in my life. So no, thank you. Can you imagine? So say, oh yeah, I'll give you a ride, baby. You know, that kind of thing. I mean, men are so turned on by the slightest flicker of glitter that they're walking by, they're just like, oh man, whoa. And they just took their eyes off of ownership. See, this is what this thing's all about, is taking ownership of our own dominant, sometimes really dominant animalistic nature, and that egoic side of things. that just dominates and rules our life. And we're just like, no, this is all I can think about. Or you have that balance inside of you because you've been taking ownership and responsibility and saying, hold on a minute, I want to offer containment, which is at equals safety. So you have a progression, if you will. So when we become self-aware, then you begin to take responsibility and ownership, which leads to containment, which then leads to safety. I'm not saying these are steps. I'm not saying that these are, it has to be in this exact order, but it sure looks like a great progression to me. So then safety is ultimately what makes a woman and a family, your significant others, your partners feel like they can do anything in your presence. Not only safe enough to create, if they're a business person or entrepreneur going and doing wonderful things in the workplace, or as a mother or whoever, right? Artist, that makes them feel safe and they can run like the wind. They can do anything. It's unlimited possibilities, right? But it's also shows forth and shines out as an example to others that, whoa, wait a minute. A guy taking responsibility and ownership, and then this, whoa, what's that? What is that? Did I just hear something? Is that I think I heard somebody talk about containment. Whoa, tell me more about this. And then, wow, that looks like he looks like a safe space. He looks like a safe man. Now, guys, you may be thinking, some of you like, I've blown it. I have totally blown it. Listen, you're talking to a guy, you're listening to a guy right now that has blown it more than I can even count, more times than I can count. And I've come to realize something in my life that, look, I'm always expanding. I'm always becoming more self-aware. I'm always looking to a brighter day. I'm always looking to see how I can mature in my life. What things am I looking at in my own mirror that would reflect someone to look up to, someone that could possibly be a mentor, someone that offers this safety and this level of ownership and responsibility to those around me. Listen, I'm grappling something with my son right now. It's I'm taking responsibility and ownership in this. Now, it may not look like that to him or to others right now, but I have to take ownership and responsibility with my own life to love myself enough so that I can see clearly through the fog. And so there's some things that are still being worked out there and will continue to the rest of my days, and into next days, eternity, right? Whatever that looks like. And we never stop learning when we go to heaven, right? We just don't. I don't believe that we stop learning and we float on a cloud looking like a chubby little angelic baby. No, I don't believe so, because we're eternal, multifaceted, multidimensional beings. And this goes on and on and on. And if we don't learn to love here, where will we learn to love? And so, yeah, there's some things in my own life. I've been a turd, I've been, I've made some mistakes, but here's the key, guys. So that you don't become depressed and shut down and ultimately suicidal, wanting to check out, you have to realize that this is what life's about. It's about learning to grow and love. It's about learning to love yourself and then your neighbor as that love for yourself reflects it to be. So this is about responsibility. This is about loving ourselves with self-awareness. It's about ownership. It's about containment and safety. Really, you can wrap those things up. If you could wrap them up in a bundle of what it means to be fulfilled in life, there it is. Because when you have all those elements working, you don't have needs and wants like you used to. You're not looking around for the next fix. You're not looking on the outside for something to bring you pleasure and joy, because you're living in bliss. When you become self-aware and take ownership and responsibility, have containment and safety, then the sky's the limit with creativity, because now you see yourself as safe and others see yourself as safe, and they want what you have to offer. How many people in this world don't offer safety? Don't take responsibility and ownership, and certainly don't offer containment, because if they don't have the prerequisites, if you will, of loving themselves, then they'll never see it to offer that level of containment where anything and anyone can flourish in that container, if you will, because you're the container. So anyone around you in proximity can flourish and run like they've never ran before with their creativity and their flow. So I want to encourage you that even though you've blown it a million times like I have, that it's not about focusing on the blowing it and saying, I'll get better, I'll get better, I'll get better, like I used to say. Well, never got better, right? Until I looked in the mirror and deep within myself and said, hold on a minute, John. What's really going on in here in the looping and the patterns and the conditioning in your life? What is really taking place here? And then once you see it, and you're like, oh, I don't like myself too well, do I? Or, wow, there it is. I'm still listening to the egoic side of me that's really wounded as a young child, and I've never got over it. So I started working out and thought it was the outward. I started, grinding it out and hustling it in the entrepreneurial world. And all those things, being an entrepreneur and going to the gym, are great. Don't stop doing that. What I'm saying is it's the mindset and the mentality and the paradigms behind it. Because once we see that as a man and we're like, oh, hold on a minute, I'm starting to wake up, not becoming woke, but awakened. Once I'm starting to awaken, then, ooh, man, now I'm getting excited because I'm starting to heal that egoic side of me so that it can integrate, so that the greater part of who I am, my spirit, can lead. That's authenticity. When authenticity can lead and it has eyes wide open, then the good stuff for everyone else starts happening. And yourself, when you look in the mirror, the responsibility, right? The containment, the safety. And then you get all the good stuff in between that, you guys. The prosperity starts happening in levels that you can never imagine, because now you're in a state of being present. See, here's the thing about having ownership and containment: you have to be present in order to take ownership of something in the moment. Have you noticed that? And then the containment is just like the expansive sphere of who you are in your spiritual circumference, and it starts to affect others around you. And then this is where heart brain coherence takes place, and then the magnetism starts happening, and this is where safety starts exuding out. And then people start to feel safe around you that didn't even realize what you were doing, and then they start to feel this level of safety, and then creativity starts blossoming out of that. But if we just continue to listen to ego and we think that that's the only part of us, like, let's just hustle, let's grind it out. The wife and the kids and the family just need to suck it up because I'm making a living, and they just need to understand and appreciate who I am as a man that provides. No, that was the consciousness of the generations before you and I. Okay. If you're anywhere under 70 years old, then you're of the newer consciousness. 70 and beyond, it was grinded out, hustle. This is what we do. And we provide for our families, 50s mentality, 40s mentality, and we don't understand why anybody else doesn't think the way we think. Now listen, I'm all for being that container of provision for other people, but I'm also all for, even more so, the provision of emotional intelligence for others. The female sensitive side, the energy of that, okay, side, as well as the masculine, being a container to provide that balance, if you will, that flow, that ebb and flow of sitting down like the Rock, sitting down with his young daughters and having a tea party, entering into that female sensitive side, that energy. But more so than that, if you can link into the intelligence, the emotional intelligence of that, man, it's off the charts, because now you're engaging in this tangibility of safety through containment and responsibility, ownership. Is that starting to make sense to you? I hope so, because man, when I started seeing this, I just changed as a man. I started changing in ways that I never thought possible, and still am. And there's still way more to go, right? But this is the beginning. This is the start of something wonderful and beautiful in men that are starting to wake up all over the planet. So be encouraged in that, brother, as they say in Hawaii. Be encouraged in and looking in the mirror and saying, hold on a minute. Am I, first of all, self aware that these things are even going on in my life? Or am I just plowing through the China shop, crashing all of the China and telling everybody else to get over it and say, so what? Suck it up, buttercup. That kind of mentality. That doesn't work anymore, guys. That's an old consciousness. We are in a new consciousness now that is really descriptive of what I was just sharing. And it's going to get better and better and better. It's going to get better for your life if you implement these things and start to perceive what was just shared. And there's so much more to talk about along these lines. And that's what this Conscious Man podcast is about. 18 inches down is we're going to be discussing a lot of this. So I'm going to drop it right there. If you have any questions at all related to these things, please drop a mature comment in the comments below. I've really grappled with whether to leave comments up or not, but I really want to engage and just say, okay, if you have a question, you're really inquisitive or just some encouragement, go ahead and drop it there. If you want to get more personal and you don't really want to share it with everybody on the planet, then go ahead and drop me an email. That would be 18 inches down at gmail.com. That's 18 inches spelled out, down spelled out at gmail.com. I appreciate you as always. Aloha from the beautiful island of Maui. And until next time, ahui ho.